Parks Canada canceled a big budget Hollywood movie earlier this year because the villain in the movie was Aboriginal. But now we've got the full story on Catherine McKenna's Parks Ministry meddling in it all. Hard Powder is a big budget Hollywood action movie that was going to be filmed in Banff and Jasper, Alberta. The movie stars Liam Neeson as a snowplow driver who vows revenge after his son is murdered by a drug cartel. Sounds like a pretty formulaic but fun Liam Neeson movie. But just 8 days before production was going to start, Parks Canada refused to grant the production team a permit to film within the national park. Why? Because one of the drug cartels depicted in the movie as part of a gang war is an Aboriginal mafia group, and the leader of this fictional Aboriginal mafia group is played by a Calgary Métis actor named Tom Jackson. That was the problem. Parks Canada, the government, objected to the depiction of Indigenous people in the movie because one of the groups of villains was Indigenous. Apparently the other villains were just fine the way they were, whatever race they are. But you know who didn't have a problem with the storyline? That Métis actor named Tom Jackson. Think about that for a second. Tom Jackson is a star in his own right. TV, films, he's even a musician, and he's a bit of an Aboriginal rights activist. If there was a problem with the storyline, I think Tom Jackson would be the first guy to tell us, not the federal government. Does the federal government think that they need to be making Tom Jackson's business decisions for him? Because that would be weird and, one might say, paternalistic. And isn't it racist to think that Indigenous people can't be both good and bad sometimes? You know, just like everybody else on the planet. This idea that Indigenous peoples only exist as benevolent keepers of the land, the noble savage, if you will, is early 20th century style bigotry. So we filed a Freedom of Information request with the federal government. I wanted to know how the feds were meddling in all of this when they thought no one was watching them. So we asked for any and all documents and communications regarding discussions on whether to allow this film project to film in Rocky Mountain National Park. Now on page 12 of this Freedom of Information document, there is a talking point that confirms Parks Canada blocked filming because one of the characters is an Aboriginal villain. It says, Parks Canada's commitment to the reconciliation and respect for Indigenous peoples was an important factor in the agency's final decision on this matter. And then on the next page, Parks Canada informs Catherine McKenna's office and defends their decision. We are very comfortable with our decision and stand by it, as we had concerns with elements of the plot related to the portrayal of Indigenous peoples. Yeah, that's a government agency telling film crews what to put in their movies. Since when is it Parks Canada's job to censor art? If people don't like it, they won't go see it. That's how movies and, well, the free market work. Imagine how much the federal government has their greasy mitts in CBC entertainment productions if this is how much they meddle in an American production that's simply using a spot in Canada as a location to shoot. I bet it's a lot given how shameless and out of line Parks Canada's demands about Hard Powder were. On page 93, Parks Canada demands script details so that they could determine how Indigenous people will be portrayed in the movie. Right here. It would be very helpful to have more detailed information concerning the storyline, script, characters, and other relevant information on the movie Hard Powder, specifically the portrayal of the Indigenous group portrayed in the film. Our documents also show how overly reasonable and patient the production team was with the federal government. To save the story, to save jobs, and to save the movie, the director actually offers to change the script and put any concerns to rest. I have the email here. It says, from what I can gather, the director is even willing to change the script to make this happen. But that wasn't good enough for Parks Canada bureaucrats who thought they could behave like executive producers all of a sudden. In these documents, we also discovered something really shocking. The objections about the movie originally came from the town of Banff and not anyone in the Indigenous community. Right here on page 152 are a brief list of objections from the town of Banff, who would rather be a bunch of social justice warriors than spur economic development in their town. Their list includes potential use of imitation firearms in the town of Banff, any potential violent activities depicted on Banff Avenue, the depiction of Indigenous groups as Native American mafia. Besides the town of Banff thinking it's their job to be offended on behalf of Aboriginals who apparently aren't, Banff was also concerned that people would recognize Banff as a location and think that you can actually use guns in a national park. Banff was just a stand-in for a fictional place in Colorado. Nothing was actually depicting Banff at all. And this is just one reason why conservatives can't stand big government. This is somebody, or rather an entire group of bureaucrats' actual jobs paid for by the taxpayer in every department, in every sector. Can you believe people are paid to look through film scripts and quibble over gun replicas in fictional movies? Up until the bitter end, Parks Canada actually thought they could bully this film production into doing what they wanted. But as you can see on page 202, the film crew had had enough of them and says, "We have moved on, and with the time left, I don't think we can afford to change back." And with that, jobs for Albertans just went right out the window. Production moved to BC. Too much BS and too much hassle. And who can really blame them? Imagine the government telling you what kind of movie you can make. What's next? Are they going to be censoring books now? Telling authors who gets to be the bad guy and who gets to be the good guy based on race and SJW demands? Where are we right now? North Korea? I'm actually surprised Parks Canada didn't demand that Justin Trudeau get written into the story as the hero in it all. In the end, the ridiculous demands of the federal government killed a project that cost so many much-needed jobs here in Alberta, and the local economy lost $5 million in economic benefits. It's insulting to the Canadian public and, well, anybody that consumes pop culture. We know the difference between a Liam Neeson action movie and a documentary, and we certainly don't need the government to protect us from any sort of confusion. And where was Premier Rachel Notley in all of this? Well, she was silent, and I know the provincial government was well aware of what was going on all along because I can see them being looped in on the email correspondence between the film crew and the federal government. The only person standing up for Alberta jobs in all of this was that Indigenous actor Tom Jackson again, who said about the film, "It can't be recovered in Alberta. It's going to go on schedule. It's just not going to go in Alberta. It's not going to benefit all the hotels and all the other amenities that might have benefited from this, including crew and including probably to some degree cast." So there's a large ripple effect and how it relates to a number of things, including our economy. Our economy is suffering. On the one hand, we have tax credits to stimulate the film industry provincially, and yet federally, because this is Crown land, we are putting up hurdles in front of ourselves in an area that may seem like inappropriate censorship. These soulless bureaucrats in Ottawa killed a big budget movie project because of political correctness, costing Aboriginals, the very people they claim they're looking out for, actual good-paying jobs. If that's what looking out for Aboriginals means, I hope this government doesn't try to look out for me too. For the Rebel.media, I'm Sheila Gunn-Reid. The Environment Minister, Catherine McKenna, she doesn't like me. That's why she doesn't want me going to the UN Climate Change Conference in Bonn, Germany. So that's why I'm going. If you can help cover our costs to get there, go to therebelun.com.